Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I hope everybody had a great Christmas, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the day after Christmas, or the time after Christmas. I don't know about you all, but in my family especially, it always seemed like the holidays would go great, and this was actually typical of any family get together, whether it be Easter, or Christmas, or Thanksgiving. But everything seemed to be fine. Everything seemed to be going great. And then lo and behold, afterwards, you find out all these things that went wrong and how it was a bad time. And this is a source of a lot of things that happen with families. And it's so common now. I used to think that my family was the anomaly because I grew up watching the Hallmark Channel and the Waltons and Leave It to Beaver and you name it. And I realized that that is not really what a family dynamic is like. A lot more times than not, there's a lot of infighting in a family. And, it's quite sad, but it's just the way it is. You have a lot of different personalities. And just because you're related to somebody does not mean that you guys are going to be insta friends. It's just not how it goes. A lot of times there's jealousy and there's there's all kinds of things that go hand in hand with this. So first and foremost, I would say that if you are like me and you deal with this, it's a whole lot of humility. Go into each situation the best you can with humility. And it's tough, and I've fallen prey to it too, where something gets said to you and it just triggers you and you go off, and that's really not what God calls us to be like. I think that it's best to, recognize your triggers and try not to let your family members suck you into it, because your family members know you better than anybody else. Regardless if you get along well, they know what makes you tick. Sometimes parents are a part of it. Like my father, one of the things that he used to love to do was bring up politics at a family get together, knowing that within my family there is a clear divide between Republicans and Democrats. So that's always great, to start that kind of crap up. But I think in a way he just was bored and it's something he liked to talk about. So he would try to get the conversation started, and it would always start a lot of problems. And then you have your jealousy. One of my biggest pet peeves with Christmas, now coming back to Christmas, is that we forget about the spiritual side of Christmas and we just go straight to the material with Christmas. It's very much, and it really, although it's with the spirit of giving gifts, in a lot of ways, it's just a commercialism holiday. Like I said, Satan is not a creator. He's an imitator, and he tries to bring whatever is holy down to a despicable level. We see that his attempts to corrupt the human line all throughout the early Bible. We see that his temptation of Jesus, trying to corrupt Jesus as our Savior. And even our Savior was not immune to temptation. That's one of the beauties of our religion and our God, is he lowered himself to become human, to experience what we experience on a daily basis. But I will bring into something that I think is great. This is Proverbs 6:16 through 19. And what I like about this is we all have been told the 7 deadly sins. And although they are sins, it's not that the 7 deadly sins are not sins, but all sin is deadly. It creates separation between you and God, especially if you live in the sin. If you live in it, there tends to be a constant shame that goes along with it. And if anything, if you're living a lifestyle that everybody's calling you a sinner and you're a bad person or whatever, we're all sinners. We all are living in sin, period. There is no difference in the weight of sin. So sin is sin, and all of us are sinners. We all fall short, and the only way is through grace. So how do you get grace? Grace is through faith, faith in Jesus. It's as simple as that. The rest of it, let God work with you. If you're stuck in a sin that is really tearing you apart, work with God on it. He'll meet you where you're at. You forget. We don't go into a Christian life perfect, just like you don't go into a gym already buff. You got to put the work in, but you got to start the journey. You got to put the one foot in front of the other, and that's how you move forward. But there are, coming back to this, things that God hates. And if you go to Proverbs 6:16 through 19, you'll read about these. One of them is haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, a person who stirs up conflict in the community. So let's start with the last one, because I feel like that one's kind of interesting, because it says a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Does that mean that you're a bad person for speaking up for yourself? No. Does that mean that if you're convicted by the Holy Spirit and you see something that's improper and you speak up about it, is that no. This is a person who is deceptively going into a community and stirring up lies. So guess what this relates to mostly? Gossip. God does not like a gossiper. You really need to keep your tongue to yourself. And gossip, at least in my experience, is one of the things that really causes a lot of problems in a family. My wife and I, in fact, the gossip was so bad between our families that we actually moved away. We got tired of it. And, we did an experiment a while back. We came back home and, we both felt a little icky for all the talking that goes on. We felt a little icky because our feelings we should have said to those person's face. But I was guilty of it. I was guilty of gossip. And my wife was too. And we felt bad about it. So that's something to understand, is that gossip is rampant in churches. So in your church community, keep it to don't say things that around somebody, even if it is true. It's not necessarily your job to ruin that person amongst everybody. It just depends. Go to the person directly, but don't go to everybody but that person, and talk about them behind their back. Don't be a gossip in your schools. If you're young and you're in school, don't be a part of it, because a lot of it's not true. And it creates so much problems. That's what bullies do. Bullies start gossip, start rumors, start gaslighting campaigns online. That's wrong. So don't be that person. Be better. And this one would tie into false witness who pours out lies. That kind of goes to if you're in a court of law. One variation of this is you're a court of law. That's why we swear an oath to tell the truth, so help me God. But that goes beyond that too. If you're going around lying about people, you're bearing false witness. Come on. It's an attempt. These last two are attempts to ruin people's character about being a false person. We move backwards to a feet that is quick to rush to evil. It means don't participate in evil things. Run away from it. God tells us to flee evil things. Get away from it. A heart that devises wicked schemes. That this kind of goes, to a premeditated thing to do to somebody that you love. You just love to get in there. You love to try to to do wicked things to people. That means your heart's hard or your heart is corrupt. And if your heart's corrupt, you don't have a good line to God. You clean that up. God opens our heart. He unbounds our heart from hatred, and he opens us up to wanting just the best for everybody, even people that we don't necessarily like. Hands that shed innocent blood. Now, this is something you need to really think about. We get into territories here where this can relate to abortion. Is the abortion just? And I've said in the past that I'm not opposed to all abortions. I think if it's medically needed, that's one thing. If it's just because you don't want to deal with a child because you had a moment of weakness, or you're doing things you ought not to be doing, well, that's really on you. That child is a human being, whether you want to admit it or not. The minute you start growing that human in your body, it's a life, and you're snuffing it out because of a mistake. We have to own up to our mistakes. And mistakes are not easy, but they help us learn. And then also this relates to murder, which there again, people could refer that to abortion, but this also means about actual murder. Does this relate to wartime? No. The reason I would say that this could, the individuals that run the country that go to war, if it's not a just cause or it's not self-defense of our nation, well, maybe that's something they may answer for on a very mass scale. But at the end of the day, we do have the right to defend ourselves, and we do have the right to kill if it's in the defense of ourselves or others. It's whenever we murder that thou shalt not kill comes into play, and that is actually what this is relating to, hands that shed innocent blood. In the Bible, it says thou shalt not kill, but really it means thou shalt not murder. A lying tongue, I think that's pretty self-exclamatory, and I think it also goes into bearing false witness, and haughty eyes, where you're just lusting after everything. And that doesn't mean just women. That means everything. Whenever you're creating false idols in your life and you're keeping your eyes off of God, we're supposed to put our eyes on God. Haughty eyes is chasing after everything that is worldly. Now, I will tell you something. If you really dig into this, there is only one of these that does not relate to communication. Hands that shed innocent blood, I guess you could say it's the end of communication, but it's a physical action. Now, haughty eyes, a lying tongue, heart that desires evil schemes, feet that quickly rush to evil, false witnessing, and a person who stirs up conflicts it's really all about your communication. And it's also about your internal life, your spiritual life, the condition of your heart. This is desiring bad things. All of these relate to desiring bad things for your fellow person. So these are things to really think about. This is a relationship thing. Because why is this? Because God deserves and desires a relationship with you. And if your heart is not in the proper place, then you can't have a healthy, fruitful relationship with God. Now, how does this relate to Christmas? Well, family get-togethers equal family disputes a lot. In my experience, it ranges from, well, Jimmy got something, they got this, and I wanted that, and I just got this. People not being happy with their gifts whenever they're too materialistic. People gossiping at the family get-together. Oh, Jenny, did you know she had a drinking problem? She's been hiding it. Oh, did you see the waistline on Jill? You know what I'm saying? We are talking about people. Oh, did you know so-and-so, she went to this party and this happened? Or so-and-so, oh, they got in a fight with such and such, and he had no reason to beat up on that guy. It's all about this. Oh, how we handle ourselves. We should want good things for our fellow person. And if you lead with do unto others as you would have them do unto you, you will staunchly get past a lot of these things that God hates. Actually, all of them. Because you wouldn't want somebody to shed your blood. You wouldn't want somebody lying. You wouldn't want your husband or your wife lusting after other things. You'd want them in the relationship with you. You would want somebody who thinks well of you and have a good heart. You would want people to help you get away from evil, not rush towards pain for you. You wouldn't want people telling stories about you to other people, and you wouldn't want somebody causing a lot of problems amongst you and your friends. So this really relates to this. If you put that in place, it does a world of good for you, and it'll do a world of good for your family. Now, what do I mean about that? Moms and dads, stay out of your kids' business. You know, if it's with their marriage, tread lightly. Me being a son, I tell my mom everything. Well, you know what, man, that's not necessarily a good idea because it made my wife feel betrayed. I forget I'm married to my wife. You know, before I would honor and respect my mother, and not that I don't do those things now, but I have to honor and respect my wife. So, I mean, that means, you know, keeping things that are our problems with each other and working them out together and not bringing outside people into it. It's our relationship. But moms and dads have a tendency to get in there because they care, but you have to show some restraint and stay out of your children's marriages. It causes a lot more problems than you think. You know, another thing, brothers and sisters, this goes for you too. Stay out of the relationships. Give each other good, solid advice without being accusatory or cussing at them. That's probably one of my biggest triggers is if you cuss at me. There's no reason for it. Also, don't assume things. You know, open communication means not assuming anything about what's going on in your family, but going to that person. Assumptions are a big one, and this one's big in my family is jealousy. Don't be jealous. You know, it goes so many different ways. It can be jealousy of relationships between individuals, such as grandmas and granddaughters, or you know, well, and sisters and brothers and brothers and cousins and nephews and nieces, all of this, all the relationships. Don't be jealous of that. Work on being, you know, improving that relationship. Also, another thing is toxicity. Sometimes it is just necessary to, if a person is being toxic, then it's important to separate from that. And I'm going to lead to something here because this just occurred to me when I was looking over the parable of the prodigal son, and I find that it fits into the relationship very well. But most of all, if there are toxic things, separate from it. Don't be around a lot of strife. Don't participate in it. But yeah, minding your own business in a family is important. Mothers, stay out of relationships between, or grandmas, stay out of relationships between daughters and mothers. It's not your job. I have to do this myself with my nieces and their husbands and my sisters and their husbands. At one time, I used to want to I would just, you know, they'd slip and say something. Man, I just want to pound the crap out of the guy for doing whatever, saying something or treating him in a way that I didn't think was appropriate. But at the end of the day, it was none of my business. You can't make somebody stop putting up with something. They got to want it on their own. They'll keep on going back to it. It's just like a drug addict. A drug addict is not going to stop doing drugs until they've had enough and they're tired of it. So, as far as families, stay out of each other's business and stop gossiping about each other is really the brunt of it. And even if it's not gossip, even if you know it to be true, you do the best you can to give solid advice. At one point in time, I've known in my own family people that weren't following God, and they had a misconception, and it offended them that I'm telling them exactly what's in the Bible. That's on that person, because that's, if you're telling them, reading the Bible to them, don't get mad at the person. We do that so often in churches. We get mad when we talk about a sensitive topic, even though we're talking about exactly like it is, right out of the Bible, no interpretation, just reading it straight, and you get mad. I will tell you this much: Satan gets mad whenever the word is read, because Satan hates truth. All right, so man, if something is wrong, and you're doing wrong, and you read the Bible, and it's telling you that it's wrong, and you get offended, what's really happening there? Is that outside influences making you mad? Think about it. But the most thing that I see destructive in families is the breakdown in communication, jealousy, and gossip. And these all happen around the holidays more than any other. So be bigger than that. Try to have a holiday without participating in those things, and be thankful for what you have. Even if mom and dad got you a set of pots and pans when you wanted a comforter, be happy mom and dad got you anything at all. Stop being petty. The Bible likes a cheerful giver. And people give, and you never know. You might have actually needed the pots and pans more than you needed the quilt. You just never know. But most of all, nobody's got to get you anything. So don't be that way. Be thankful that they even thought of you in the first place. That goes for any kind of a gift. Be thankful. That's the thing that in the American culture we're losing. We're losing it at a heartbreaking rate, is that we're losing our ability to be thankful for what we have. We're always wanting more. We're always looking what everybody else has and comparing ourselves instead of just being happy for what we have. Because if you go outside of the United States, it's a different story. It's a different story. You go to some of the poorest parts of Asia or India, or go into the Congo, go into some of the indigenous areas, even in the United States. Go to some of the poorer areas. They're happy that anybody thought of them at all. So don't be that person. It's petty, and it's shameful to act that way. You ought to be ashamed of yourself and feel that shame for being that kind of a person. It only rots you from the inside out. And that's what God is against. He wants us, he wants to restore us from the inside out, because that is where people rot first. Not outside in, inside out. Their heart rots, and then the rest follows. But I want to bring into something here about something that just occurred to me in the last month about the story of the prodigal son. This is in Luke, Gospel Luke 15, 11 through 32. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in the wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of the country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father. But while his father was still a long way off, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. Now, there's more to this, but I'm going to stop there. I want to point out, we often see this as we ought to forgive with open arms, and we should. But something is said here that makes you have to think. It's starting at 17, when he came to his senses, he said. Often we miss these things, but he had to come to his senses first. So this means he had to admit that he was in dire straits and that he had wronged his father before he went back to his father and they could have a solid relationship again. He had to want it first. How often do you have issues with a family member and you read this and you're like, man, I'm a crappy person. I need to just forgive and forgive and forgive. And they keep doing and saying mean stuff to you. They got to want it first. They got to mean it first. In other words, they have to come to their senses. So this holiday season, remember, have an open heart. Do not do evil things in your relationships. But don't chase people who haven't came to their senses for that relationship. And this may include you. It's just not about who wronged you, but who have you wronged? Have you come to your senses? If you have, you got to take that first step. Then it's on them. But anyway, I hope everyone has a wonderful New Year. Please be safe. And don't be so proud that you can't humble yourself to your own mistakes and to be open. But most of all, don't be a doormat. The only way things improve is actually through strife. You never learn anything in the good times. It's always the bad times and the hard times that you learn the most. You learn the most from your losses more than your wins. And you learn the most from being humble in life. God loves a humble heart. Because it's through humility that we learn and that God can actually have a really great relationship with us. We have to take the pride out. So have a good one. I love you all, and we'll talk to you next time.